And we've kind of dodged a few monsters in Claire's segment. Like, for instance, the giant worm monster. I'm just going to say it outright before we get to talk about individually. A lot of these monsters don't really feel like they fit into a lot of scenes in this game. Like, in the first game, every monster somewhat had a connection to the Ashford family, But, when you discover the laboratory, you find that they're all secret experiments a government was working on, or a pharmaceutical company to create super soldiers. But in this one, some of them just feel like they're just added in there just because they're fan favorites. Like, for instance, the Hunters. Really great monsters in the first game, including the third game, kind of reduced to, well, honestly, just cheap enemies to waste your time.
Yeah.
Like,
I think cheap is a very common critique of some of the monsters in Code Veronica.
Yeah, like, Hunters in the first game were predatory monsters that, when you return to the mansion after all the puzzles you solved, you're no longer dealing with zombies anymore. A new monster has taken their place and killed them all in the mansion. And, they don't act like zombies. If they hear a noise, they go into, like, a hunter sort of phase, hence the name. And, you can sneak around them, but you've just got to be careful. Or if you had a magnum, then you could honestly just shoot through their armor. Of course, you had to solve a puzzle to get that, and hold on to certain items you find very early in the game. But in this game, they feel like padding, and that's a good way to describe Chris's first segment of this game. You return to the prison island after Claire. However, all those shortcuts you unlocked, all those doors you unlocked, you can't go through them anymore. And it just made the game padding like that. Because when I was doing a second playthrough, and I had to play through Claire's segment, I managed to get through her segment pretty quickly because I knew everything and, I unlocked all the shortcuts. Chris's one took so long. I even have it on my Xbox One. No, let me just get up the time on my save profile. Okay, yeah, here on my video. Okay, so when I last saved, Claire's segment from the beginning of her game to when I finished it off, that took me around an hour. Chris's segment in the prison took me 2 hours. And most of that was backtracking.
Yeah.
Like...
Oh, and that's another thing that we have to talk about is the really bad backtracking that you have to go through.
It is so bad. Like, the first game, I know I'm bringing this up a lot, but honestly, comparing how well they did it in the previous games just goes to show how wonky and bad a lot of decisions were for this game. Like,
yeah, it's like they understood that certain things needed to be done, namely, they understood that a lot of like original RE formula is, you're in a place, you can't go to some places, you can't go to others, you need a thing to open that door, it's like, and so you're kind of going in circles, collecting things, getting new areas, exploring those, coming back. But the reason it works in games like RE1 and RE2 is that, like in RE1, you're limited to the Spencer Mansion. So, it's not a big deal to go down the stairs and turn right to go back to that other room. It's like a couple seconds.
Plus, the puzzles were
simple thing.
Very clever as well. Like, for instance, in the first game, you find this shield above a fireplace, like the very first thing you can interact with, but you don't know what you can have it for. But then later on in the game, you notice there's a print with a shield label on it, and you're just there thinking, oh, I remember where I saw that. Like, things that, think you don't need right now, and then when you discover it later, you feel smart, to hold on to it or finding that item early.
Yeah.
In this game, I just don't feel it. It's like, oh, find a key card for this door, find a key card for this door, find a plate for this door. Oh, and the plate is halfway across the map. It's like, yay.
Yeah, that's the big issue, is that, like, even, obviously RE1 was extremely limited in terms of where you actually went. But even in RE2, it's like, they made sure that you were limited to certain regions at a time. So at first you're just in the police station, and so you're just doing puzzles around the police station. And then later, if you go on to the lab, you don't have to backtrack all the way back to a corner of the police station to go, and then go back to the lab in order to progress to the puzzle. That would be stupid. And that's what Code Veronica does,
But-
is that they're like, all right, go all the way back to the start of the game so that way you can get this thing and then come back to the beginning and then loop around. And God forbid that you don't look at a guide, because if you don't look at a guide, you might have to just wander around aimlessly, desperately hoping you can find something.
That was pretty much me during the majority of Chris's segment. During Claire's segment, I don't remember having to look up a guide for Claire at all. But for Chris, especially in the last 2 hours of my playthrough, I just got a guide.
Yeah, and it's completely reasonable to do so.
Yeah, because the puzzles in the previous games made you feel smart when you finally pieced them together. This game just feels like, oh, we hid it around here, but you weren't able to get it because you didn't have this thing that, it blended in with the background and you wouldn't have noticed it.
Yeah, and like even within the functionings of certain puzzles, there's certain added tedium. Like there's this one puzzle that I've seen criticized where it's like jewels in the head of a lion.
Oh god, that was a headache.
Yeah, I guess you had some troubles as well. And it's just like you have to run back and forth, turning on the power, turning off the power, rotating the thing, just to get these gems. And if you did it wrong, then you gotta do a whole new loop just to get it. And it's just things like that, where in an RE1 or in RE2, it wouldn't be that complicated. It wouldn't be that convoluted. It would just be, you got the thing, put the thing in the thing, remember the other thing, and that's it. It's none of this back and forth bullshit.
Actually, no, I'll make that puzzle sound tedious. There is something wrong with how you describe it. So, you had to turn off power to get these things out of the lion's head. And conveniently, the power thing is on the other side of the door. So you're thinking, oh, jolly good, mate. The problem is, the door to get to the lion requires power. However, if you have the key that you find ages ago to unlock that door, then you can get into there no problem when you go back there. The problem is, though, you got to go up an elevator again, through the garden, and potentially dodge a poisonous hunter, which... just a brief thought. Poison hunters. Why add those enemies in? Why? That just made it even more tedious. And then you can go back to the lion and get the jewels. I know,
ridiculous.
And it's so tedious. Like that's a good way to describe Chris's segment of this game. Like Claire's was okay. The puzzles were pretty not memorable. They were just boring. Just typical key card puzzles, and I think there's like a math one.
I have to step away for a brief moment. I will be right back.
All right, then we'll be back.
Okay, I'm back.
Hello, back. I'm Bill.
Yeah, it helps someone find a credit card.
All right. I was going through my notes. Yeah, I was going through my notes. I actually found something else that I had problems with Chris's segment. So, a lot of things that you could have... where's the note again? Right, here it is. So, the hunters, how you had to fight them in this game was pretty annoying. Because, for instance, hunters aren't actually on the map as often. Instead, it's these weird little androids that have a light, and sometimes it's unavoidable. Like, there was literally a cutscene where Chris is like, oh my god, they're still here. The moment it went into gameplay, I immediately got caught. It's like, wait, I didn't have a chance to react to that. And hunters aren't challenging in this game, though. They're just basically fast zombies. They don't have any unique mechanics or anything like that. They're just extra fast enemies.
Are they the ones with the stretchy arms?
No, those... I don't even know what they're called, but those are some weird addition to the game. But those are also cheap monsters, similar to what you were talking about earlier. There's been times they're off camera, yet their arms smacked me in my face.
Yeah. Looking back at some of my notes, they just... the backtracking, the tedium. One thing that I've seen... and it's just really unfortunate that it was developed alongside RE3, because there's so many other mechanics that RE3 implemented that this game could have really used. And we already mentioned some of them with like the dodge mechanic. But like, there's even some simpler ones like aiming. In RE3, there was a designated button for aiming at objects versus aiming at creatures. So that way, if you wanted to hit that barrel and explode the zombies, you could do that without having to aim at the monster on accident.
Oh, the second playthrough, that happened to me a lot, where I was like, there's so many zombies there, like, just hit the barrel. It's like, nope, hit the zombie, that's like halfway down the hall.
Yeah, it's one of those quality of life things that that Code Veronica could have used. Another thing that was that they had in 3 that was an improvement, which they go back on in Code Veronica, is how the characters interact with stairs. Whenever you're going up or down stairs in the earlier games, it's like a cutscene and you lose all control. Even if there's monsters pursuing you or whatever, you can't stop mid-climb and shoot the monster. It's just a cutscene. But in RE3, the stairs are actually interactable, so you can like stop on the stairs, turn around, shoot a monster, go back up the stairs.
Yeah,
it's like...
I tried to do that in my playthrough, and it was like, oh, I can't shoot the zombies as I'm walking towards my death.
Yep, it's just another one of those mechanics it's like, realistically, you understand why, because they were co-developed, but that just proves that they shouldn't have been co-developed. It's like, if you're gonna have a spin-off, that's why spin-offs historically have different mechanics and are like sometimes just different genres altogether. It's that way you avoid this very problem where people go, wow, this spin-off sure is inferior or sure is superior to the actual sequel because they're using the same core gameplay. And that's why, it's reasonable to go with like a gun light game or light gun game, or go with a action game instead of it being the survival horror in a spin-off. It's so that way this doesn't happen where people go, man, it's a shame that that Code Veronica is missing the mechanics that improved RE3 so much.
A good example of a spin-off game, not being tied to the main story, but, it has features from the main game, but also improves some things. Do you know a game called Dishonored?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so there was a DLC spin-off about Dao the assassin that killed the Empress, and you get to learn about his story, but he has similar mechanics to Corvo, but with some minor tweaks, like for instance, the ability to blink, you can stop time so you can choose where to go without the fear of being spotted, or even simply there's more extra knockout abilities. Minor things that improve things from the main game. More abilities to be non-lethal and more, small things that improved your survivability of handling enemies and exploring. But in this game, it really just that's why I feel like this was meant to be a sequel, but then, things changed, because Resident Evil 3's original game didn't improve much, it just added a few extra things. But it may seem minor, but they still did a lot of good.
Yeah. And the only other thing in my notes that I thought I'd bring up is the fact that Code Veronica is the first game in the series to be completely 3D, including the environments, which sounds like an improvement, but the problem is that the hardware wasn't really there yet for detailed environments, and as a result, the game actually looks kind of worse in Code Veronica than it did in even RE3 or RE2, because in those games, the backgrounds, because they weren't actually three-dimensional objects, they were paintings or drawings.
Yeah.
So like whenever you're walking through Raccoon City, those are pictures of very detailed pictures of the surroundings. And of course there's shortcomings to that technique, and it's obviously going to be inferior to a full 3D environment, but it's only going to be inferior if the fully 3D environment has the same level of detail and depth. Code Veronica didn't have that, and so instead of being an upgrade to 3D environments, you said have all these flat walls with flat pillars and flat ground and with no real detail, and it just looks worse, which is really unfortunate.
I think my issue with that as well is that this is my problem when it came to looking for things. Aside like ammo boxes standing out, not many things really stood out unless it was like it had a sparkle effect on it. But many times I've walked past something that was a key thing. It's like, oh, why didn't you interact with that? It's like, because it looks like a piece of a fucking wall.
Yeah.
Oh, why didn't you interact with that desk? It's like, because nothing is highlighted on there that shows I could pull something out. Like, even in the...
Whereas...
Even in the first game remaster, when you walk past a desk, the drawers would look highlighted, like it stood out, like, oh, that can clearly be pulled. So,
yeah,
to give
and
you
that was one of the... Yes, yeah, exactly.
Like, just small little things like that would have made exploring just a little bit better for me in this game.
Absolutely, and that was one of the advantages of having the backgrounds be drawings while having the actual interactable stuff be three-dimensional. It made it to where you could tell what parts of the environment were actually supposed to be interacted with. Whereas once everything became the same and became 3D, it just sort of lost that. And again, I'm not saying that progress bad, we don't like 3D. No, I think 3D is obviously the way to go. RE4 looks light years better than anything that came before it. But it's just, you can't half-ass it, you know? Like, there's so many movies in the 90s and 80s where they wanted to go whole hog on that CGI because it was the hot new technology, but they didn't know how to do it well yet, so it looks awful.
They all wanted to be the Jurassic Park T-Rex.
Exactly, but the reason that worked, because they had lots of practical effects too, and they only used the CGI whenever it was in specific circumstances where they could make it look good. They knew how to hide the shortcomings of CGI, whereas most other studios didn't get the memo, and as a result, they misimplemented it. And the same is happening here.
I can see what you mean, and the other thing that kind of bothers me now, I'm looking at my playthrough of it, sometimes even the monsters just don't really blend with the environment so well. Like, they stand out a lot, but the environment just doesn't feel like they belong there.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, one of my other complaints, I guess we might as well finish up by talking about the final bit of Chris's segment, as well as the story segment, and even talk about the bosses. So, okay then, so the bosses, the giant worm monster, nothing really highlighted about it. I've said it before, it doesn't belong there, there's no story about it. It's a cool looking monster, I will say that much.
Yeah, it's like, if you told me, hey, you want a giant worm monster in the game, I'd be like, hell yeah, but then it's implemented like this, it's like, well, maybe not so much.
Yeah, and oh my goodness, in fact, I even have video footage of it showing it's a cheap boss fight. It has an instant kill move. Now, I've also said this, yes, the Tyrant from the second remake has an instant kill move, but they give you ways to avoid it. You know, they drop pillars down, so, you know, get in front of it when it does this animation. And even Leon says, oh god, it's about to charge, and the Tyrant does a roar as it prepares to charge. Whereas this worm will just instantly appear out the ground and just potentially kill you or not.
Yeah.
And there was a moment I was behind it, but then Chris just teleported in front of it, because I don't know how big the hitbox is, but I got instant kill by it a lot when I was right behind it.
Yeah.
It is such it's such bullshit.
Yeah, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure the original RE3, they also had a worm boss.
Yeah.
Which, from what I can recall, and like people were sad that it got cut from the remake. But it's just like, it's the comparisons that end up getting drawn between RE3 and Code Veronica are really tragic, because if Code Veronica had just come out before RE3, I feel like you could excuse a lot more of its shortcomings. But because it came after, it just feels really mishandled.
Yeah, well, again, this wasn't by the same team that done the original game, so already you don't have the people behind it. You have a team that clearly wanted to do something big for their game. I think a good way to sum up Code Veronica, it was too ambitious for its good.
Yeah, that's true.
Like, I'm not going to be a shitty person and say there's no effort put behind this. No, there is a lot of effort put behind this game. The problem is, though, I think they just weren't ready to handle this type of game.
Yeah. And it's ironic that, back in the day, RE3 got treated well by Capcom and is still quite loved, but then Code Veronica got outsourced, and as a result, it's considered a more flawed game. And then you fast forward to the modern day, and everyone adores RE2, but then RE3 Remake gets outsourced to a different company, and as a result, it's not as liked as most of the other modern RE games. The Code Veronica the ghost of Code Veronica got revenge by sabotaging the RE3 remake.
Veronica!
I won't get a remake, but you won't get a good one either.
I actually like the third remake.
I've talked about it too much. I'm done talking about it.
Until the next podcast.
Have to mention it at least once. Next episode will be like, today we're talking about the original Dracula. Yep. You see, while Dracula's, got problems, at least he's not RE3 Remake.
Fuck you, man. I played that. I did a permadeath run of that game and won.
Yeah, I mean, whenever it's that easy,
Oh, shut up! I'm trying to boast my skills here, and then you're just there like, it's an easy game. Just fuck you. You're fired. Again.
Oh, no. I'll take my severance pay, please.
Okay.
Anyway.
Yeah.
What other bosses did we want to talk about?
So one monster that did get foreshadowed pretty well was this, I can't remember what I think it's a salamence monster that hides in the water and it electrocutes you, because you had to get like a emblem to get the key out of it to use Alfred's jet plane. Now, on one hand, the build up to this monster was one of the best build ups in this whole game. So you read notes and you interact with smaller versions of it, but then you find a note later on talking about what they're like at fully grown, and you do hear its roar when you find an emblem, and it's not really a roar, it's more of like a high pitch screech. And for a large majority of Chris's playthrough, you're thinking, what is this monster? And then you finally get to the emblem, and you get a first person perspective, kind of like the opening to Jaws, showing it swim in the water. Then you actually see a fully grown monster version of it. On my first playthrough, I was so stuck because I couldn't shoot it, despite the fact I would be right in its face with a shotgun, and I somehow didn't hit it. So I was thinking to myself, alright, before I keep wasting ammo, let me look up a guide. Now in the video I saw, you can just run into the water and be quick and just take the shield and just say, bye-bye. But to me, that just ruins the whole build-up to this monster. This is a monster that was built up quite a bit in notes and research projects, and you even interacted with the smaller versions of it that could kick your butt. So you're just there thinking, like, oh my goodness, how powerful are these things at like a fully grown age?
Yeah.
But
yeah, so that was well established ahead of time.
But in all honesty, on my second playthrough, I did kill it, but it can't even hurt you if you stand out on the water. It doesn't even like stand on its two legs from behind to slash at you. No, it just swims around, and when you damage it with a gun, it's like, owie, I'm gonna bounce around this pool until you run to the other end to hurt me. It's like, what a disappointing boss fight. Like,
I'm watching the fight, and it's like, it doesn't get out of the water. It doesn't even try to hunt you down.
Do you see the way
boss is this?
Do you see the way it swims as well? That's so comedic. That's not scary.
Bruh.
Yes.
Like, say what you will about some of the other game bosses in the game, but it's like, at least the worm will attack you.
Yeah.
At least it's not a sitting duck. It's literally shooting fish in a barrel. You literally just shoot at it until it's dead. They're like, all right, time to go.
If you just wanted to be quick about it, you could just get the shield and just be like, goodbye.
Yeah, and then you'll never see it again. And it's like, wow. In fact, that's probably the more effective strategy.
Yeah, like you save ammo.
Like save your ammo. Yeah, it's like, I don't even think you get any reward for killing it, so what's the point?
No, like that's the same with a lot of boss fights in this game. You don't really, aside the worm, when you save the security goal, save, quote unquote, you get the dual machine guns. You don't get anything for killing a lot of the bosses. Now, okay, yeah, sure, you didn't get anything when you killed the tyrant or the Nemesis or William Birkin, but they acted as final bosses for those segments.
Yeah.
They were the build-up. This guy was the build-up through Chris's playthrough. And what does he do? He doesn't even really get that much of a dramatic cutscene.
And it's like, it's fine for like a main story boss to not have a reward. I mean, ideally rewards are cool for progression, but technically the reward is, you get to continue the story. But with a side boss, one that you can avoid fighting, there should be a reward for fighting him. And again, I hate to make the comparison to RE3 again, but that was the gimmick with the Nemesis, was that you could avoid him, but you were rewarded if you chose to fight him.
I was going to bring this up before my flu came in. As short-lived as the crocodile was in the second game and even the remake, at least the build-up to it was brief, but it also was, eventful. Like, one moment you're going through sewage and suddenly there's big alligators just roaring at you, tearing everything apart, and you have to run. And then you finish it off. It was cinematic and a bit over the top, even in the original, but it was at least memorable.
Whereas Salamander Boy is like, hello, I'm dead. And then it's over.
If you choose to kill it. But that's what you think, okay, because the island's already been, blown up at this point. So let's assume the canon is Chris just left it. Is that guy just still there, it's been 20 years now, wonder what everyone's up to.
There's a lot less food than there used to be. Yeah, no, it's...
I'm gonna get my moment to shine. Unless my owners make some giant vampire lady, I'm sure I'll be memorable.
I know, right? I sure hope the final boss isn't, infinitely more unique than me. That'd be unfortunate.
Do you have
speaking of which...
Yeah, so I guess we're going to talk about Steven's boss fight. Oh no, Steven.
Oh, I forgot you even have to fight him.
Well, fight him. And this was the part that made me rage and made me see the folly of the bosses and enemies of this game. So, okay, we talked about how the game forces you to fight a lot of the monsters. It's unavoidable. Now, when it came to the supplies, though, I never felt like there was a moment I lost health. Aside from when I was being an idiot a lot of the time. But there was never a moment I felt like the game cheated me by me taking unnecessary damage. I felt like I could get through a majority of the Claire and Chris's segment without, taking damage, as long as I'm smart and I learn the enemy's abilities. Steven's ability, though. Okay, so his boss fight is a run-in segment. Now, there is apparently rumours that Steven was meant to have a much more bigger boss fight. I'm not sure if that's true or not. Like I said, it's hard to look up information about this game. Now, okay, so Steven becomes some new version of a tyrant. He mutates and chases after you. We do fight also the twins' dad, but he doesn't really offer anything interesting. He just throws poison clouds everywhere. Nothing interesting. Steven, he has a giant axe, and I will say, design-wise, Steven's tyrant form looks awesome with a giant axe and everything. I was like, oh wow, that's actually kind of scary. But what does he do? He can literally kill you in 2 hits, and you can't avoid those axe slices.
Yeah.
And this is a complaint which even fans have said, Steven's boss fight is the worst. And for good reason. It's a cheap way to lose health. On my second playthrough and even my first one, I had to stockpile health because this segment isn't even that long. It's less than a minute. But you have to run away. You have to quick turn away. But of course, like I said, the quick turn's a little bit janky. It's not as quick as it makes it sound because the enemies are way quicker. But Steven's first swing takes off half your health at full health. So then I take a full heal, but then he gets you with a 2-hit combo, which again knocks you down to 1 hit left. So then I had to eat another health potion, and he does that same swing that takes off half your health. And then you can avoid him and complete that segment. That is just, without a doubt, just bullshit. Because what would have happened to a player who unfortunately had to use all their health kits for another boss fight they didn't do well on? Oh, I guess you can't complete the game because Steve inevitably hits you. Sorry, bitch.
Yeah.
That's like, okay, listen, Dark Souls and Bloodborne are hard games, but they rarely ever felt cheap. Like, it's hard, but you could defeat every boss fight without taking damage. It's hard, but it's doable. You can do that.
People have done it.
Yeah, there's videos on it on everything. Now, you can avoid Steve, but you have to sort of like break the game in a way. Like, you're meant to run into him to cause him to do an animation, to do one of the animations, and he can miss you, but he goes all janky and stuff like that. But that doesn't look like a legitimate way the game was meant to play for that segment. I feel like they didn't play test that bit enough.
Yeah.
And it shows, because the fact that I had to stockpile on 3 health kits to avoid that boss fight is not a strategy, it's just padding and just cheap.
Yeah.
And I don't want to say that because his design looks cool. Like, you give, as much as Steven's just an annoying character, he has the coolest design out of all the bosses in the game. And he's just limited to a chase segment that isn't that good. That is so unfortunate.
Yeah.
So I guess to wrap up this segment though, so Chris and Claire, they have to work together to escape. Now I will say this is actually a nice moment of Code Veronica. When Claire and Chris actually reunite, it is a really sweet moment, because I guess we don't really see them interact as much in a lot of the main games. To actually see them happy to see each other was actually pretty heartwarming. And I'm not saying that to be like, oh, let's find something good. No, that in my Let's Play, I was legit like, oh, that's sweet. Because, you know, these two have been separated for so long. They've been through hell and back. You know, to finally see them reunited was a genuinely good moment. And, you know, you were rooting for them to get out together. You know, forget Steven, you know, save yourselves.
Yeah.
Listen, I'll take...
Heavily encouraged to forget Steven.
I'll take, you know, the brother and sister bond over the romantic story they tried to do with Steven. Which I still...
Trying to have 2 characters fall in love over the course of, like, an hour is so stupid.
Yeah.
It's like...
Well, I don't even think Claire fell in love with him. I think it was just Steven. Like, Claire just wanted to help him because he was a bystander just caught in this... But I don't even think... I
hope she did. Because she lost him.
Yeah, rewatching a lot of my footage for this video, I don't even think Claire was aware Steven had a crush on her.
I think he says he loves her.
Oh yeah, oh yeah, that is true. But I think Claire just was crying before then because she promised to get him out and she didn't. Which I will say,
it's fine to cry when people die.
Like, okay, I will say,
even if the person who dies is Steven.
Like, okay, I guess to also give it another point, you know, that moment where Claire feels guilty that she couldn't save Steve, that was actually a pretty gut-wrenching moment, because, you know, as much as we don't like Steve because he's a bad romantic interest, you know, Claire is that sort of person, just like her brother, is willing to do what it takes to save an innocent person, even if it might cost them their own life. But when she fails at that, she feels failure, she, you know, feels like she's not living up to the Redfield name, because apparently that's, you know, one of the key things about a Redfield name. But, you know, you do feel for her.
They're good people. They're trying to help. And,
yeah,
you know,
there are some points in the story it does do things well. But another point in the story that I thought did really well was the reveal about the twins, that they're not technically biological daughters, son and daughter of the family. They are, or at least not the original ones. The ones that we interact with, I believe, are BOWs. Like,
yeah, I think they're clones or something like that.
That was a really good twist. I was like, okay, interesting. And you find out more that, you know, that would explain why, you know, the son somewhat has 2 personalities, because, you know, they're twins, so they gave him
it wasn't... He was never supposed to exist, so it's one of those things where it's like, that's an interesting element to his character that I wish they had expanded on a little better.
Yeah.
But, you know, we've given lots of criticism. We should probably give, you know, some unironic praise. And I think there's definitely things in this game that I like and I think were cool. Like you said, I think I'm gonna forget his name. Alfred. I think Alfred as a character is a cool idea for a character and for an antagonist. I think having, him having this like alternate. I don't know how you'd call it, but like this other version of himself that's his sister is an interesting idea, and I think for those who've in the anime watching community, it has a very monster feel to it, the anime monster, because that also has a twin thing going on where it's like, oh god, and it works well there, and so like I can definitely see the appeal of this sort of character, and I think it was probably one of the better elements. Like we said, the worm monster is a cool idea, and I think giving Claire her own game in general was a good idea. I think she's a very cool character and she deserves her own game.
Yeah, even in Code Veronica, she's still has traits from the original one, and also Claire, I know that made its way into the remake. But I just feel like there were a few moments they did kind of just make her, one moment she's just badass shooting her way out of, a military grade place, dodging helicopter bullets.
That FMV has aged dubiously, but I can totally see it being the hypest thing ever at the time. And it's like it was clearly a post-Matrix world, and you know what? It's fine. I don't mind it.
It's entertaining. The cutscenes are actually pretty good, actually. Like, do you know what? Especially when you compare to a lot of like PS1 cutscenes. Yeah, especially Tekken. Have you seen like the original Tekken cutscenes?
Oh my god, it's a work of art.
It's so bad. I'm like, someone greenlit this.
The franchise is massively successful now, so clearly they knew what they were doing.
I mean, even at the time, the gameplay is still great. So you know what? Bad cutscenes.
I'm not sure. I don't know if Tekken 1's gameplay is great. I don't think even Tekken fans. Maybe for the time, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I'm saying. Like, I could go back and play it. I played it when that whole PS1, I can't remember what that was called. You know, that little mini PlayStation 1 thing came out?
Yeah. The PS Mini.
Oh, that thing was bad. Waste of money.
I love my PS Mini.
Do you want to play Crash Bandicoot? We don't have them. You have Spyro? Nope. Toy Story 2?
What?
Yeah, like, they didn't have, like, the mascots at the time. It's ironic that...
Holy cow, why even play? Like...
Oh, but they had Final Fantasy VII. There's that.
I mean, that's good. I mean, at least they got one iconic game.
Oh, and Tekken.
Jesus.
But, yeah, okay.
Anyway,
that's a topic for
but back to the...
That could actually be a funny
Code
topic
Veronica.
we could tackle, looking at all the games that were on that.
Man. But back to Code Veronica, the FMVs are... I'm glad that they're trying to make her look cool, because, I support that. If anything, I think I would prefer having these cheesy... what we got in, like, RE3 Remake. With, it's like... I think RE3 Remake can learn a thing or two from Code Veronica when it comes to...
oh my god, man.
When it comes to making your female characters look cool without making them seem like a bitch.
I swear, people, he only goes this much into hating Resident Evil 3 when he's talking to me. Even when we're casual
Resident Evil 3 Remake, to be clear.
Remake.
I am...
Because he knows I like this game, and even when we're casually talking, he's like this.
Hey, listen, it's not my fault that it is a perfect lamb for the slaughter in terms of tiny things that it did wrong. It's just so perfect. It's a perfect learning exercise for how not to make a game.
I can tell you are making the biggest grin on your face right now. How about this? I'm going to start trashing all over Undertale.
Good luck.
Nah, I actually can't. That game's fantastic.
Yep, that's what I thought. But no. I think Veronica does a good job of making Claire seem cool and powerful, without making her seem, like a damsel, which is very good. Like, in that era of games, and I say that era, in just general, a lot of stories struggle to make the female characters seem like A, real people, and B, not damsels. And I think they achieve both with Claire. I think that's definitely worth commending.
Yeah, I never really dive into a lot of these sort of topics because, one, my channel was pretty small at the time, but I feel like I'm more comfortable to talk about like female protagonists in video games. Like, people need to get this idea, like, having a character be a really strong, independent type of main character is not bad. It's just how do you make them likable? Like,
exactly.
I don't hide it. I love The Last of Us Part 2. I'm somewhat looking forward to the remake of the first game. I'm not paying 70 quid for that. Fuck that. Do I look like I'm made of money, Sony? But what made me not really like Ellie and Abby as much as main characters, that there wasn't anything relatable, or there wasn't anything worth like me rooting for them, those characters. Claire, on the other hand, and even Jill in the third game, Jill, you rooted for her because she knows things about Umbrella and she has the only information that could take them down for good. And she's being tracked down by a Terminator, so you're rooting for her to escape. Claire is trying to find her brother, and she's trying to do the right thing. Like, the second game, she's trying to save a little girl. She could honestly just say, fuck that, and she could have left at any point. But she just didn't feel that was right to. Now, sure, is that a bit cliche? Yeah, but it makes you like the character more because they give it an opportunity to just say, fuck this shit, I'm out. But
absolutely. Like, that's the thing that both RE2 and RE3 get right, is that they make Claire and Jill feel like, you know, humans who are trying to be good people even in a hard situation. That's one of the big things that I really praise about the original RE3, is that I think Jill is a really well fleshed, a very human character, and they do a good job of making it clear, like, you know, compared to the remake.
But also in the remake, just saying. Go on.
No, she isn't. She's terrible in the remake, but she's literally the most cliched. Anyway, she's you know, it's important to not accidentally pull an RE3 remake and make your character seem like, you know, a robot.
What? Listen, the day we actually meet in person, I'm going to be like, hey, Jaru, but I'm going to slap you across the face like, that's for all the Resident Evil 3 remakes.
I don't think you like RE3 remake enough to slap me.
Nah, no. I don't feel like doing a Will Smith.
Anyway,
keep my game out of your damn mouth.
But no, it's really hard for some reason for people to write female protagonists that don't seem like robots, and not just today, but like in general, throughout game history, having female protagonists who don't seem weird or jank has been a struggle for some reason. And that's one thing that I can never critique RE for, is that Jill, Claire, even characters like Ada, like, you never get the impression that these people are, you know, cliched robots. Like, they feel like, you know, obviously the voice acting stuff was dubious in the early games, but they weren't cliches. Like, they weren't just damsels, they weren't just love interests, and like they tease you with a stupid love interest in Code Veronica, but then they kill them, and good on them. And then they have, you know, Claire continue to be a strong, independent woman who doesn't need a shit man. And yeah, it's just, like, very good. I much approve in terms of that. You know, it's like you can have your characters be really cool and still have them be very sympathetic.
I tell you what, since we have kind of dived on this for a bit more, so before we get to talk about the final bit and even talk about, you know, ask the important question about a remake for this game, I feel like to end this segment is that when it comes to writing female characters, and this is from someone who wanted to write his own female protagonist, like, you know, there's nothing wrong with, like, you know, having a character who's like really good at a lot of things, but there's got to be something that makes the viewers or the players, you know, want to root for them. You know, like it, and you know, sometimes it can work if there'd be like a chosen one sort of story, but or something like Kippo, a Netflix show, did a really good female protagonist, a very optimistic girl in a ruined world, and she she has somewhat of an effect on the people around her. She's surrounded by people who have grown up in a harsh world, have not really seen the positive sides of it, but then they meet a character like Kipo, who's really positive and optimistic, and she's so lovable and dorky, and it makes you enjoy her company. And I feel like when you see the characters that she interacts with, you feel like they needed that sort of character.
Yeah, and like I've watched like a season or so of Kipo, and it wasn't a show for me. But I can't critique Kipo being. She's definitely not unlikable. Like she is a very pleasant character. Like you're happy to root for her.
Oh yeah, she's not like a Shakespearean character, but there's very few qualities to dislike her.
No, she's very like she is the pleasant, affable character that you can easily root for in any story. She's kind of like the Luke Skywalkers of yesteryear, who it's like, was Luke that interesting of a character?
Not really. I think
not really.
A lot of us are just nostalgic.
He was a nice guy. He was a simple man. He just wanted to do what was right. He wanted to help his friends, and so you rooted for him, and that was good enough. And that's what you want to see, and you want to at least have that with female protagonists, with any protagonist. But the issue is that especially with men writing female characters, is that
they're either too horny or they're simps.
Yeah, to use very internet slangy descriptions, yes, that's a very apt way of putting it. They're either like, I kick ass and chew bubblegum, and I happen to have long hair. Like it's either that, or it's like they're like the most cliched girly girl, and it's like it's fine for a character to be a girly girl, but if it feels like they're that because the writer has no idea what the hell they're doing, then that's not ideal.
So should we wrap up this Code Veronica story before we get to the last question? Because we've actually been recording for 2 hours. I just realised, Jesus.
Yeah.
I mean, some of that's going to be cut, so it's just silence.
True. And one last thing I'll praise about Code Veronica is that I did think it was cool, the part where Wesker fights Alexia. I thought that was a cool moment. Cutscene. Because it's always cool in any story at all to see two different villains fighting each other.
Oh, absolutely. Like, someone who's grown up with a lot of Marvel and DC stories, seeing like characters like Ultron fight like the Red Hulk is so entertaining to watch, or like Darkseid fighting Doomsday. It's like
exactly.
You don't think about it at first, but when you actually see it, you're like, yeah.
Absolutely, because it's so rare that you get to see. Because normally when it's hero versus villain, you have to root for the hero. It's just the default. But when it's a villain versus a villain, and when it's a hero, they'll typically pull their punches a little bit because they're the good guys. But when it's two villains, they're just gonna try and murder the crap out of each other, it's gonna be great. And that's just fun. And plus, this was helping establish the power level of Alexia, because we already know that Wesker's this new superhuman, scary dude with demon eyes. But we were like, what are his limits? Like, could he take on someone in a Birkin power level, or a Nemesis power level, or a Code Veronica or Alexia power level? And this fight establishes, no, he is more than human, but less than like the main villains of the game.
Yeah, he did get a little fucked up in the cutscene. Like, it's short, but it's. This is a good segue to talk about the ending of this game. So yes. So after everything you've been through, Alfred's dead. You've defeated all the monsters. All that's left is the final clone, Code Veronica herself, who's the clone of the founder, one of the founders of Umbrella, which is a nice twist. So you also find out why Albert attacked this facility. The virus that Veronica has, it could be the key to, because he wants to continue his tyrant experiment. That's like always been Albert's sort of goal, to create the perfect tyrant. Sadly, the remake's already done that for him. So that was also another twist. Veronica is a tyrant, a different type of tyrant, though.
Yeah.
Now, I will say, the cutscene where it shows her transformation, I remember watching it on my playthrough of that. I was like, whoa, okay then. I did not see that coming. I thought she was just going to be like, you know, Albert, do like Matrix moves and all that. No, she lights herself on fire and becomes like this demonic female tyrant version.
It's actually a pretty cool design.
Yeah,
all things considered.
Yeah, look, people, we've trashed the game enough. Look, this game has its moments. Let's not be completely blind. We're not haters. When the game, when the game shines, it shines like a diamond in the sky. Oh, copyright.
Deleted instantly. The VOD's being deleted as we speak.
They're just.
But no, it's like
yes.
She definitely had a cool enough design to where, like, if her character had been a little better fleshed out, she could have been up there with Birkin as one of the best, you know, RE villains. If like she had a cool enough design for it. It didn't quite pan out that way in terms of character, but design wise, no complaints here. I think she looks pretty cool.
What was also kind of interesting about her boss fight, at least for the time period of these Resident Evil games, did you ever notice all the bosses you fought was either a human that lost control and became a monster? Like the virus took over. Veronica was not that case. She was in full control of that before like Resident Evil 4 and all that, where, you know, people controlling the virus was the norm. Code Veronica, this
is before like your Lady D's and similar.
Yeah, Lady D's. I like the short term for that. But yeah, like she was in control of the virus, and it's very minor, but when she actually shows her just walking up to you, it shows like her confidence that she views herself as a goddess amongst humans.
Mm-hmm.
Even like she also has an instant kill move where she just picks you up and just lights you on fire and then just drops you. You know, like she thought that little of you. It's just a shame though. Her boss fights range from the first one just being so simple and lame to her second stage being infuriating to then her final one just being underwhelming.
Yeah.
Like design-wise, it's really good.
Yeah. It's just the way it ends up being implemented with Chris's inventory being shared with Claire's that it leads to some
frustration,
game-breaking problems.
Yeah, like I know we did talk about it. Like the sharing item mechanic, a good idea on paper. Just it needed, you know, a warning or something like that, because
it would have been fine as long as you had a warning.
My first playthrough, I gave all my weaponry to Claire and I got bamboozled.
Yeah.
But even when I did restart it multiple times with Chris having the shotgun, the grenade launcher, it wasn't enough for her. We should move on to the second boss fight, I guess, more so, because you could actually defeat her first boss fight with just a knife. She's that simple.
Yeah.
Which is really underwhelming because the first Tyrant boss fight is, you know, still a powerful fight in the first game, unless you had the Magnum. But then when you get to her second boss fight, where she's this giant boss monster, oh my god. Oh my god, I'm having PTSD just remembering that. Stay strong, Bill. Stay strong.
I can't hurt you anymore.
Well, no, it's off max. It's like, okay then. Now, how does boss fight work? She has multiple different variations of attacks, but she also summons minions that attack you as well. Do you know what game did this in the Resident Evil games, but also did it better than this game? Resident Evil 3 Remake.
What?
Just felt like an opportunity to praise that game.
Okay. I was unprepared for the foul language you were using.
Okay, but no. Okay, let me do a comparison. Now, okay, I know it's unfair to compare a remake, but when Nemesis's boss fight before his final transformation, it was in an arena, and occasionally zombies would get flooded in to also help out Nemesis. Unless Nemesis jumped on them and crushed them, which, if you ever saw videos of that, Jaru, it's so funny to see. Like, these zombies will look like they're about to get in, and Nemesis just crushes them when he lands. It's so Looney Toony looking.
Yeah.
But yeah, but you're given a big arena to run around in and, avoid the zombies as well as Nemesis. It's just that you need to play smart and watch him. But in this fight, you're crammed in a corner and she will keep spawning these little annoying little pricks that will keep damaging you and poisoning you. Why is there so many poison enemies in this game? Why? just why? Actually, I think I generally did get real angry there for a moment.
Yeah. I mean, I don't blame you.
And just her boss fight with those minions, like, if it was just her without the minions, it's a fine boss fight, different variations of attacks, learning her pattern and stuff like that. But it feels like they added those minions in just to make it slightly more difficult. But it didn't make it more difficult, it just made it annoying. Like, there's a difference between making a boss annoying and making a boss hard. Like, again, we've brought up Dark Souls. Yes, they're hard, but they're not, like, attacking you. Well, some bosses, anyway. There's those bosses that are big, intimidating, but they're not, like, supersonic speed moving like monsters. They have patterns, you can learn them, they have move sets, and when you finally learn that pattern and learn where they're most vulnerable, you attack it. That's what makes a boss fight engaging, is that you need to also play smart and learn their attack pattern to damage them enough to win. It's not just simple, jump on them 3 times and the boss fight is over. But
yeah.
Even in the previous games before it, yes, all you had to do was shoot them. There was no weakness to it, but you still had to learn their patterns before you engaged them because, they all had unique movesets. But when a boss fight like the second stage of Veronica just spawns enemies while also attacking you at the same time, that just makes it... There's a lot of RNG in that boss fight. Unless you do what pretty much every player done, saved all your flame crossbow bolts and just spammed her, and you can end that fight in 20 seconds, which I did.
Yeah.
And if you... And again though, if you wasted all those arrows beforehand to deal with those stretchy arm guys, the game's like, well, I guess you're just gonna have to get lucky, bitch.
Yeah.
And again, you are still limited to your inventory slots. Like, in total, you can have 4 weapons, ammo to carry all your stuff in, but then, in total, you've got 10 slots for guns, health, and ammo. And I'm sorry, but for Veronica's boss fight, I really felt like the inventory system just didn't have enough to fight it if I didn't have the crossbow bolts. Which is a fault in the boss fight. Like, if you have a boss weak to fire, that's fine. Just give me more fire weapons.
Yeah, or foreshadow it. This is the lady who could set people on fire. Why is she weak to fire?
Yeah, that could have been a good hint.
Yeah, it's very dubious. It's unfortunate.
Oh, you're cutting out for me.
Sorry. No, I paused because you were talking.
Oh, okay. So when you finally damage her enough, she goes to her final segment, which, again, cool design, she turns into a dragonfly, which was foreshadowed from the times they've, in the video where they torture dragonflies, and they've had that emblem everywhere. So, in turn, she became a dragonfly in a way. Comes full circle.
Yeah.
It's just a shame, it's so anticlimactic. Like, every Resident Evil game ends with you aiming a rocket launcher at the boss and blowing them up, right?
Yeah.
Well, the game gives you an infinite rocket launcher because it's RNG. She'll sometimes dodge the rocket, but yeah, she'll keep dodging until eventually the script says, okay, you can hit her now.
Yeah, I've actually watched a speedrun and they mention how in that it's just luck. They just pray that it hits sooner rather than later.
Yeah, there are a few scripted moments where she does generally avoid it, but then there'll be a moment she just stands there and just hopes that, it's like she just wants it to end.
Yeah, and it's just it's very unfortunate the final part of the game is as rough as it is, because if this was a problem earlier on, where it's like you had to reset the game just to get enough ammo to win the fight, like, that would be bad.
I did.
But at least it wouldn't be as bad as the final boss being in this, because then it's like it's so funny. I hate this game, but I've actually kind of softened on it more over time, and I just kind of feel bad for it. I feel like I can see why it has a fan base, and I feel bad that the game they love isn't as good as it should be.
Like, I want to make it clear as well, I don't want to hate this game. Like, I've become a big Resident Evil fan. I've understood why people started hating the 5th and 6th game, because being just a casual viewer, you know, when I heard about this game getting bad reviews and stuff like, you know, mostly Resident Evil 5 and 6, I was like, oh, they seem fine and all right. I don't see why the fan base really want to hate it so much. After playing the remakes of the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd one, and even going back to look at the originals and seeing just how great they were, to then see what they become later on, you know, I started to feel for those fans. It's like, okay, I get it now. But I'm sorry, this is just one of those games where just too much of it sets it back for me.
Yeah, it's a sad failure. Like, for a long time, I put it down near the bottom of my like worst games of all time list, alongside stuff like Final Fantasy II. But I think I've changed my mind a little bit. I think this is better than something like Final Fantasy II, because like with Final Fantasy II, they took a broken game and made it worse. but with RE, with Code Veronica, there's plenty of things worth praising, and it's not such a substantial step down that RE fans don't still enjoy it. Like, I've seen people who are big RE fans play through this game, complain the entire time, and then get to the end and go, 7 out of 10. You know, and it's like, it still has those core RE elements where if you're a big fan of the formula, you can enjoy this game. And as long as it's not your first playthrough, the game is extremely bad for first-time playthroughs. But if you know what you're looking for, if you know where all the puzzles are, and if you know where all the enemies are, and you know where all the ammo is, and you know the mechanics, it's a much more acceptable experience. And that's why the people who've played it a bunch enjoy it, because they're not falling for these traps anymore, because they know to look out for them. But for the average player, you know, that first impression's gonna be rough.
Yeah, that was for me. You know, like, do I ever see myself playing it again in the future? Hell no. I removed it from my game library on my Xbox. I got it for free with Xbox Gold, and I can see why.
That's so cruel.
Okay, I joke about it. No, most of the time, PlayStation Plus and Xbox Gold do give you some really good free games, but this wasn't one of them. Although the Simpsons video game was a lot of fun. I'm glad I got that for free.
Which one was it?
I know it's confusing. The Simpsons video game by EA. Yes, by EA.
Oh. I'm completely ignorant of it.
Oh, it's a fun little beat 'em up game. You should play it someday. It's a lot of fun. It's probably really.
Oh, the side scroller.
No, this one's 3D. Bart, Homer, Lisa, and Marge get like unique powers. Like Homer can full on turn into a ball and roll up.
Oh, okay. The Simpsons movie game.
No, it's just called the Simpsons video game.
No, you're okay. Sorry, I'm mixing stuff up. I know all the Simpsons games. It just took me a second to figure out which one it is.
I know it's
just calling it the Simpsons game is very nondescript.
Yeah, I know, right? Oh,
sorry, alarm.
All right.
Anyway, back to Code Veronica.
Yeah. So to end it off, or at least end off what we thought about the game. It's a fine game when it comes to Claire, and I do agree with you that it is unfortunate, because I feel like even though not much is said about this game, clearly there must have been... Actually, I don't even think it went through development hell. It's just one of those games where there were passionate people behind it. It just had too much passion, and it just didn't really live up to the expectations of the fans. And obviously not enough people played it because it was on the Dreamcast.
Yeah. And,
but
one question, I think...
I was just
the topic of Code Veronica Remake specifically. Did we want to talk about that?
Yeah, I was just going to end off by talking about this game. I say this is the worst game I've played for my channel, but it's not the worst game I've ever played. Ride to Hell Retribution still exists.
I've heard no good things about that
It
game.
is. It's not even so bad it's good. It's just bad. Broken mechanics, terrible story, and what's even sadder, the main character's voiced by Stephen Ogg, the guy behind Trevor Phillips, and he's so bad.
Unfortunate.
Like, take the most energetic actor, you know, when he's playing as Trevor, and then just make him so miserable. It's like, how? He's like one of the most entertaining actors you can have for your game. You know, minus when...
I'm glad he...
You know,
glad he moved on to better things.
Yeah, you know, minus when he killed my favourite character in GTA 5, Johnny Creepos.
Rest in peace, Johnny Creepos.
Yeah. But yep, Jaru did brought up the next point, which many people were hoping this is going to be the next one. Does Resident Evil Code Veronica deserve a remake? Yes. Yes, it does.
Absolutely.
Easily. Like, yes, we've done nothing for the last 2.5 hours, mostly trashing it, talking about many of its broken upcomings, but are we against the idea of this game making a comeback? No. This game deserves a comeback.
Yeah.
Like, we've
like,
kind
when
of
talking about...
Sorry, go ahead. We kind of talked about it briefly. There are fans making a remake of this game on the as a mod for Resident Evil 2's remake. But obviously, I don't want that. I don't want to... Like, don't get me wrong, I love mods for video games, but I don't want a mod. I want a legitimate game by Capcom with their, their delicate hands. Well, delicate unless you look at their history.
Sometimes delicate as of late.
Yeah, like, when they get a dedicated team behind a game, you can tell there's a lot of work. Like Devil May Cry 5, it's beautiful. Resident Evil remakes, really fun games, and even Resident Evil 8, brilliant. My favourite Resident Evil in the whole franchise as of lately. So to see that type of passionate team behind a remake for Code Veronica, they can improve the boss fights that just didn't work. So for instance, look at the Tyrant in Resident Evil 2 in the original compared to the remake one. Vastly superior. Like the remake one. They took what was just essentially just that boss that would appear out of nowhere and be like, haha, I'm here to slow your progress, to a threat that would pursue you through the levels. Yeah. So if they could do that to a boss that no one ever talked about until the remake, they could improve so many monsters. Like, make the worm a reoccurring monster that would chase you. When you're in the building, you could still hear it outside. Like, maybe it'll smash through a window and try and grab you.
That would be cool. It'd be like just a nemesis, but one that only stalks you on the outside. That'd be a cool idea, actually.
Yeah, or even, there's clever ways to avoid it. Like, you lure a zombie outside, and it's munching on the zombie, and it drags it underground. It gives you that moment to complete a puzzle. There's so much they could do with this game, because, like we said before, this game wasn't going through development hell. It's just an unfortunate, straws that they got given. So, with better funding, now that Capcom have they go on PC, Xbox, PlayStation, I could see people buying this the moment it's out. Because, before, all you could get it on was the Dreamcast. And by then, the hype for the game kind of died down when it released on all platforms.
Yeah.
But a remake from the ground up, I would probably pay more money for that than I would The Last of Us Part 1 remake.
Yeah. And my thoughts on the topic are that there are two kinds of games that are worthy of getting a remake. And, well, I guess really there's just one kind of game. And it's games that had good things, but have aged poorly. And, the original RE games were that by definition. They were great. They had great elements, but they had aged poorly. And as a result, people wanted to see them with a fresh, coat of paint. They wanted to see it improved while still maintaining the core things that made it great in the first place. And I think that Code Veronica definitely qualifies. If it was so bad that it was worthless, no one would want a remake. They'd be like, no, this is best forgotten. But because it's got these interesting elements, these interesting ideas, and these interesting characters, you want to see it done well, and you want to see it done justice. Like just from the things I've thinking about it, like that I'd like to see. I'm always happy to see more Claire. I'm always happy to see more Wesker. I'd love to see a modern take on Wesker. And I joked about it earlier, but the whole thing with having Alfred be this trans icon, it's like, unironically, there's a lot of potential there for him to be a really cool character and this really tragic character. Like, obviously, if, people could get away with a lot back in the day without being called offensive. But, if you're going to have a character who's a villain, who's one of his big deals is that he's kind of pretending to be a woman at times. If you're going to do that, you have to be very careful in the modern cultural zeitgeist. Or Zeitgeist. No, it's Zeitgeist.
Yeah, but I think a lot of times you do need to look into the context. Like, if he was just dressing up as a woman to make fun of transgender, then yeah, there's clearly a problem there. But
sure, but that's not all. It's like anytime you have a oppressed group and you make them the villain of your story, you have to be careful to make it clear that they're not a villain because they're part of that group. They're a villain for other reasons.
I think that's where a lot of somewhat modern villains tend to fall into that category. They try and they're part of this group, so you're meant to feel sorry that they do bad things. It's like, no, you do bad things, you're a bad person. Like, it doesn't matter what group you're part of. Like, did you ever watch Falcon and the Winter Soldier?
No, I had no interest.
Well, the villain, if you have no interest, I'll give you a spoiler. The villain was a girl who was part of this group where they felt like life was better when, half of humanity was dead. But they never showed why. And they do all these atrocities, and they keep on saying we're misunderstood. It's like, you're a fucking terrorist. You want to bring the world back to when half the people were dead. It's like people lost their families, their children, their friends. When you create a villain like that, but you're meant to feel sorry for, it's hard to feel sorry for them.
Yeah, you have to write them really well if you're going to have them be that extreme.
Yeah, she even says when she's talking with the hero, Falcon asks "Oh, you think it's okay to kill?" It's like, if it's for the right thing. It's like, so you would kill me? It's like, no, you're twisting my words. It's like, no, he's just saying what you're willing to do for your organization.
Yeah.
So they could totally make Alfred and even Alexia interesting villains. I'm just not sure in that sort of criteria. Just make them just insane, but show the mental damage that Alexia did to her brother, and I think that would make us feel more sorry for him.
Well, and what I was getting at is if they maintain the plot point of him, having this identity crisis, then there could be a lot of potential there to make him actually a really appealing character to the trans community, because the whole premise of his story is that he was they were trying to clone a woman and he accidentally existed, and it's a common idea about transgender people is that they were born in the wrong body. So it's there's definitely room there to make him actually a character they could find really compelling.
Are you saying they should transcend him to new heights?
Yes. I agree most hesitantly with your stupid pun. But
my amazing pun.
But no, and it's just he's a character who, if you handled poorly, could have a lot of backlash. But if you handled well, you could have actually a character that people really celebrate as a really well handled representation of a certain kind of real people. As long as you didn't, it's a very delicate topic, obviously, but I think there's room there for something really unique, and it would be unique for Resident Evil too.
I think they could they could turn those two into really good villains. Maybe even that sort of criteria, because look at Marvin and William Birkin in the remakes and the originals. I mean, even from after watching the originals, there was nothing memorable about them. William was just a monster. Marvin was just that character that was like, ugh, we were attacked by zombies, blurg, to a tragic character who helps you out and helps you try and figure out your way out of the station, to then that sad moment when you have to leave him behind and then you see him again as a zombie. It's a heartbreaking moment. It's like, what should have just been that one character you just say hi to, then bye to, is a character that you talk to who helps you, and then saying goodbye to them and see him turn to monsters. It's hurtful. Same with William Birkin. When you see a man so desperate to just prove that he's a brilliant scientist, like, he clearly looked up to Albert a lot. Like, you know, with the Tyrant, it was a near perfect project, but then William, you know, he felt like he could do even better, but then they were going to steal his idea, and he felt, you know, betrayed. He felt like he was worthless, so in a desperate attempt, he turned himself into a monster, but clearly not thinking it through, as when you fight him, he's screaming in agonising pain. So he did think it through perfectly, but you felt for him. You really did feel for him, even though he's evil.
It's a great way of writing a sympathetic character who's also the villain, you know, a sympathetic villain. And I think that, you know, it's just like what you're saying. They turned these pretty one-note, or like not as fleshed out as they could be, characters into fully fleshed out, really engaging, really memorable characters in the remake. And I think Alexia and especially Alfred have a lot of potential there to do that. And, you know, it's so funny because, you know, like, obviously I'm not LGBT, but I'm just like, I've been interacting with that community a lot that you know of. But I've been interacting with that community a lot lately. I'm just looking at this character, and it's like with Alfred and Alexia, he's literally born wrong and is forced to live his life looking at a better version of himself that he never gets to be. And it's like his ideal self. And it's just like, that is literally designed to be a trans metaphor. And it wasn't, I don't think, originally, but it's like, it has so much potential.
When you put it like that, that could actually be a really good... obviously, you know, Alfred shouldn't be that, we should be like Alfred. It's like, no, that's not the point.
No, and like, that's not the point of any, like good writing is about, like, when people say they want representation, it doesn't mean that they want, you know, their character. They want characters across the spectrum of good to evil, just as long as they're in there at all. Like, it's fine to have, like, gay villains. It's just not okay to only have gay villains. Yeah, you know, it's what are you saying something, bro? You know, it's like they just want their characters to be there at all. It doesn't matter who they are, what they represent in the story, just as long as they exist and are acknowledged, and you get to write stories about them. That's what they want.
I like, for the remake of this game, if it ever does happen, which I would want it to happen. Like, don't get me wrong, I'm excited for Resident Evil 4's remake, but I'm one of those people that says, I don't think the 5th one should be remade, I don't think the 6th one should be remade. They're too memed, and they even acknowledged the Chris Punch and Boulder meme. So I want those to still remain canon, because they still have a somewhat serious story to them. It's just that their gameplay is just bad.
Yeah. And I feel like we're better off getting new games rather than revisiting those games.
Yeah, like honestly, Code Veronica, I'd say, would be a decent end to the remake, sort of. What do you quadrilogy? What? I know you have trilogy. What would you call
I think it's quadrilogy.
Quadrilogy. Yeah, I would be happy if Code Veronica is the finale of that, and hey, we could buy a box set of all 4 of those games, because
absolutely.
Obviously, we'll have to see how good the 4th game remake is. For all we know, that could be the worst games to ever come out of Capcom lately.
I mean, you never know.
I don't want it to be, but I'm hoping the game's really good.
Yeah, I hope it's a true sequel to RE2, rather than say what you will about the original.
Don't.
Say what you will about the original RE4.
Okay, I thought you were going...
It's very different from RE2.
Okay, no, I actually thought you were going...
I think we can agree.
No, I thought you were just taking another opportunity to shit on Resident Evil 3's remake. I thought that's what you were going for.
No, I'm going for a much more high-profile target. I'm shitting on RE4.
Oh, God.
8 out of 10 at best. But no, one thing that, you know, I would critique about the original RE4 is that it doesn't really feel like a proper sequel to RE2. It doesn't feel like a proper continuation of Leon's story, even if it's a cool game. So I think the remake has a lot of great potential to be a proper horror retelling that stays true to Leon's character from RE2 Remake. So I look forward to it. I hope it turns out well. I hope it goes down in history as like a worthy successor to the original RE4. And I hope afterwards we get Code Veronica Remake, because I think even if I literally couldn't give less of a shit about Code Veronica. But even just the fact that I'm now seeing the potential for a really cool character in Alfred and a really important character for certain members of the audience, I kind of want to see it just for their sake.
Right, yeah.
That's my 2 cents. I hope I'd like to see it happen. It may not. It won't affect my life if it doesn't.
Nah.
But it'd be cool if it did happen.
But yeah, I think to wrap up this, this whole analysis and review of Code Veronica, and even potential remake, it's a fine game. It has some issues. I am happy to know this isn't a game that suffered, any controversy or stuff like that. It's just, bad marketing, bad business, and, just unfortunate events that led to its downfall.
Yeah.
Because, honestly, in total, compared to every single game, Code Veronica is nowhere near the top 10 worst. But I could...
No.
If I had to choose between playing this game or something like... what was that one... Do you remember this one Mortal Kombat game where you played as Sub-Zero? It was like some side-scrolling platformer.
Oh yeah, Sub-Zero Anthology or Sub-Zero Mythology.
Yeah, it was.
Oh, what was that called?
It was a side. But yeah, you know the one I'm talking about. It's a side-scrolling beat-em-up game with the mechanics of the fighting game, though, which doesn't work for a platformer. And that game's what. I might do a video talking about my top 10 worst games I've ever played in my life. But Code Veronica would not be on that list.
Mortal Kombat Mythologies.
Yeah.
That was what it was called.
Yeah, it was
Mythologies : Sub-Zero.
Yeah, it was going to be a whole series on multiple characters, but Sub-Zero failed, and the rest is history. But yeah, just like I say, I might do a video doing top 10 worst games I've ever played in my life. But Code Veronica wouldn't even be near the top 10. It has its problems. I'm not going to lie and say it doesn't. There are some issues with its gameplay, its mechanics, some good mechanics like the dual wielding, but a remake I would be 100% on board for. Even the same with Dino Crisis. As much as I think that game's pretty bad, in a lot of places, if I heard that any of those games got remakes, I'll be down for it because they're games that I can see potential in. And yeah, overall the game was just I really couldn't see myself playing the original anytime soon. I can go back to play a lot of the original games. Code Veronica, sadly, is not one of them.
Yeah. Unfortunate. It's a great game in theory. It has some great ideas, is what I meant to say. It's just unfortunate circumstances, unfortunate execution, and a lot of missed potential. And I would not be as critical of it if it didn't come out after RE3. But because it did, it has to bear the weight of being, if you're going to have a sequel, it needs to be better than the game that came before it, or at least as good, and not just have less mechanics. So the fact that it came out after RE3 really hurts it, and I wish it didn't. I wish it got... It's funny, normally when I hate a game, I hate it forever. But honestly, I just kind of feel bad. I just kind of feel bad now.
I guess you could say, this is the game where, it had many great people before it, but obviously trying to live up to expectation while not being ready for it is how you could sum up this game. While also saying, there are obviously some decisions, with the story that are just bad. The Stephen romance, don't bring that back. Just let them be people just
if they
remake to escape.
Yeah, if they remake the game, I heavily encourage they either make Steve a bit younger and a bit more sympathetic, or make him a bit older and make him more cool. Either make him fully a cool character who you're sad to see die, or a fully sympathetic character who you're sad to see die. Either way, just this awkward middle zone where he thinks he's cool but he isn't just makes him so obnoxious. Just tweak his character, tweak his scenes. That is just, God, change him, please.
Yeah, like,
if I'm rooting for his death, then you've done something very wrong.
I mean, if you saw my playthrough of the game, even when it was that whole dramatic cutscene, I was still so angry from how they did his boss fight. I didn't even take in the time to process how sad his death was to Claire. I was just happy to have just gotten through that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, you know, there's a lot of potential to do a remake for Code Veronica. Like, obviously, there's not as many... Like, if Resident Evil 4's remake is going to be as long as its original was, then... And Code Veronica is not as long, it's going to feel weird to do a shorter remake. But... I mean, this depends on how they do the full remake, but... You know,
well, just the fact that it's going to be shorter means that they can do it better, you know?
Yeah, that's what I was saying. Like, if Resident Evil 4's remake is as long as its original counterpart, and they do plan to do... Here's the thing, like, it could be possible they might be planning Code Veronica, but chances are they're probably getting another team for it. Who knows? Like, if Capcom repeat the mistakes of the original, then... oh god.
Yeah, that would be very unfortunate.
Ironic, because they, you know, doing the same thing they did before. I'm not sure if I'm using that right, but I don't know. But I think that's what we have to say now. I mean, I have nothing in my notes.
I think
we've covered everything.
Yep, I think I've...
Veronica.
Yeah, I think I've covered everything I had to say, too.
Alright then, people, so thank you for watching us talk about Code Veronica. Like, what do you think? Do you think this game's a underrated gem, that you felt like we were too harsh on it? Do you also agree it might have been a bit, you know, rushed in places and just didn't have the opportunity to shine? Let us know in the comments below, and, you know, criticise Jaru all you want for shitting all over Resident Evil 3's remake and Resident Evil 4. He probably deserves it, but not really, because if you're really that type of person that does that online, touch grass, please. Like, there's too much shit going on in this decade to worry about some guy's opinion about a video game.
Right? No kidding. Man, I saw a headline the other day that was like, Gordon Ramsay picks a sheep to eat, and it's like, is this really newsworthy?
Oh.
And it's like...
Oh, yeah, Putin is starting another war with another country. Yeah, but Gordon Ramsay wanted to kill a sheep.
Yeah, it's like, wait, is this really high priority news? Anyway, I digress.
Yeah,
high hopes to...
pretty lame.
Yeah, it's click-driven news is the stupidest kind of news.
Indeed.
But I digress. Yeah, those are all my thoughts on Code Veronica. I hope they get that remake. I think everyone would like that.
Alright then. So with that said, thank you all so much for watching. Jaru, do you want to do your outro and I'll do mine?
Like if you enjoyed the video, comment if you got something to say, subscribe if you want to see more, and as always, have a fantastic day.
And with that said, thank you all so much for watching. Be sure to share the video around, get the channel growing, and hey, stick around. We might have more stuff for you in the future. Farewell, everybody. Also, Resident Evil 3's Remake's a fucking good game. Jaru doesn't know what he's talking about. Bye!
Wrong.